Captain America Brave New World, the 35th film within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the 4th Captain America film, directed by Julius Onah, who we all clearly remember from the Cloverfield paradox. But this film stars Anthony Mackie taking up the shield as the new Captain America, which we all remember from Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which happened 3-4 years ago at this point. So in many ways, this film is a direct continuation of that plotline, but also picks up plotlines from The Incredible Hulk, The Eternals, and of course dozens of other Marvel's things, because we all know how it goes at this point. So there weren't a ton of expectations going into this film. In fact, from most of the marketing, it wasn't really even surrounding Captain America, the character, but more so Harrison Ford's involvement as he takes on the character Thunderbolt Ross, who was previously played by William Hurt. And the marketing kept on pushing one thing, that we would see Red Hulk. And so even with those little expectations, I still found this movie incredibly disappointing. And just like every other Marvel project that I review, I have to talk about the entire cinematic universe as a whole, because it really is impossible to simply review these things isolated from the others. And I think with Marvel taking essentially all of last year off, the only thing that was technically in the MCU was Deadpool and Wolverine, but it felt like a reset, like they kind of wanted to take a breather and try to figure some things out, because we all know this phase has been less than ideal for them. Their very best films post-Endgame have just been okay, and some of them have been downright awful. And of course, you can point to things like the pandemic, the writer's strike, whatever's going on with Jonathan Majors. And so with them taking off essentially all of 2024, I was really hopeful that they would at least learn some lessons about what was working and what isn't working, but this film feels like they've learned almost nothing. And I'm gonna sound like a broken record if you've heard my Marvel takes before, but essentially everything that doesn't work with this film is the same things that hasn't been working for the past 5 or 6 films. And the worst part to me is that I think there are actually good ideas within this story. I didn't love Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but at least that one had ideas. It was this whole thing of a black man taking on the role of Captain America. A person who has been mistreated by their own government based on the color of their skin now is going to take on the shield and be a representation for that country. We were introduced to the character of Isaiah Bradley, who comes back in this film, and he played this version of Captain America back during the Korean War, who was wrongfully imprisoned by his own government after serving it. And so there are some really cool themes that Marvel could work with. So I'm not sure if it is just Marvel wanting to play it safe and not really touch the topic of race too much within this, because it feels like they kind of just mention it for the sake of mentioning it, but don't explore the ideas any further than the bare minimum. And that gets to a much larger issue of this film, is that it really doesn't even feel like a Captain America film. In fact, the main purpose of this film feels like it's trying to just tie all the loose ends that Marvel has been setting up for years, such as Thunderbolt Ross. In many ways, this entire plot exists to turn him into Red Hulk, which I'm not even sure if that's a plot line that fans have been begging to be resolved, but we do know that when William Hurt played the character, that was one of the few remaining things from the Incredible Hulk film that remained within the MCU. And so it's just odd to me that the two main characters from that film, the other one being Edward Norton, aren't even actors within this universe anymore, but yet we're still referencing that film as if it's the most important thing to this universe. And so there is part of me that wants to give this film a pass, because if we do get to Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four and they end up being pretty good, then perhaps this film just existed because they knew they needed to wrap up this storyline. But if that's all they wanted to do with this film, it feels like Disney's kind of just wasting our time. They know people are going to show up for these movies despite the quality of them, and I think it's a bummer that they're correct in that. I will go to these movies, because the quality of this is quite poor, to say the least. Like most post-Endgame MCU movies, the CG and action set pieces are quite dull and rather generic. Like 30 seconds after watching a fight scene, I couldn't tell you one memorable thing about it. And the dialogue is so over the top and over-explained that you feel stupid as the audience, because the movie doesn't trust you at all to understand basic concepts. Characters are constantly explaining their motives. They're constantly telling each other where they're going and what they're doing. Thunderbolt Ross, for example. We all remember his daughter Betty from the Incredible Hulk movie, right? Well, in case you don't, they go on and on and on to remind you that he has a daughter. In fact, this is the President of the United States on the brink of war with Japan, and the only thing he is concerned about is that his daughter is going to dislike him even more because of going to war. But I think that's just where we are with these movies. They are so dumbed down to the point where they can only focus on one thing at a time. And the only thing this movie wanted to focus on is the relationship between him and his daughter. So if you were expecting a character arc for Captain America, you're not really going to get it. So despite all those issues I had with this movie, there were still some parts that I did enjoy. Danny Ramirez, who takes on the role of the new Falcon, is quite charming, and I do enjoy seeing him within this movie. And although I did have a lot of complaints about the character of Isaiah Bradley, the small amounts we did get of of his backstory I did really enjoy. I just kind of wish Marvel was bold enough to make any sort of definitive theme within these films. But perhaps that's me asking too much from a franchise that has already given us so much. Like, I really try hard not to let these mediocre movies affect the films I did enjoy from 10-15 years ago, because there are genuinely some good stuff within that. I just think it's a case where Marvel got way too ahead of themselves, promised way too much to its fans, and it has gone so far that they don't even know what to do with themselves anymore. So those are some of my brief thoughts on Captain America: Brave New World. I would love to hear your thoughts, so if you've seen the film, please comment below what did you think, and I will see you next time.